Hello and welcome to Honest Not Perfect with me, Aminah Hanif, the Senior Content Manager at Source Fashion. So this episode is a little bit different, as you can probably tell, because we're going straight behind the scenes from our flagship event earlier this year. So over the 3 days, I was able to catch up with some of our incredible speakers. We talked about the themes that they explored on stage, but also I tried to push them a little bit further, tried to pick their brain a little on how we can really move towards a more ethical and sustainable future for fashion. In keeping with the theme of the podcast, these conversations are honest, challenging, and hopefully you'll agree they cover really, really meaningful topics. Berni, you're looking fabulous, as always. Could you please describe for the listeners what you're wearing?
So today I'm wearing a dress that actually, this is quite unusual for me, that I threw together with my hands, both machine and hand stitch. And it's made from some remnants of fabric for a collection that we piloted with Jumpers 123, who are a cashmere jumpers manufacturer, and we piloted, myself and my daughter actually piloted this collection with them, and these are some pieces of fabric that were left over and I just put together, plus on my boobs, if I'm allowed to say that.
You can.
I've got some wonderfully embroidered Algerian flowers that I bought in Paris, and I've also got one on my bum.
Fantastic. Well, you look amazing, as always. Oh, what about your shoes?
Oh, yes, and my shoes, the feet.
Yes,
the feet, actually, this is hilarious. They came up as an algorithm on my Instagram, of course. Okay. I don't know what I've been looking at, but anyway. And they're from a Korean brand.
Okay.
So I couldn't resist them.
Yeah, I mean, they look amazing.
They're actually jelly. They look like, for anyone who can't see, and if we're just going live with speaking, they are like shrimps, pink shrimps.
Yeah.
Do you know those sweets?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm wearing a couple of giant pink shrimps with my Adidas socks, of course. Oh, and my handbag.
Yeah, wonderful.
I've got a giant hand bag. So it's a bag that is a hand.
Looks incredible. So you've just been on the catwalk stage on a panel. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been talking about today?
Okay, so the panel discussion was around are consumers ready to be paying a higher price point for their garments? So I was there as my role, which is at Central St Martin's, part of the University of the Arts London. I work in the fashion team there and I lead on knowledge exchange. So I sort of support on building new projects for the curriculum, working with a sort of plethora of manufacturers, spinners, NGOs, big brands, small brands, medium brands, et cetera. So I was really there sort of on an educational or with an educational voice as to how we talk to our students about building brands, building businesses. Many of the alumni who are now part of New Gen, or British Fashion Council, emerging brands, medium brands, and go on and work for the larger luxury brands. So obviously, although we're an art school, it's really important that we teach them about commerciality and selling. Either, for me, commerciality is just the selling one. But then some of them might go on and sell 21 or 21,000. So really how I was adding to the discussion today was how we talk to our students the importance of their consumer. Who are they designing for, and who's buying it, and how and why will they be spending that little bit more on what they're selling, because obviously a lot of what they do is either slow luxury, if we want to call it that, creativity. So it's around materiality, it's about sourcing of materials, understanding ethical manufacturing. All of these things are really important. And also what I was saying is, we were asked, one of the questions was, how do we have this in the curriculum, and how do we know that that our students are interested in this or working with sustainable angle? So even in recruitment, so when we start to recruit the students and looking through their portfolios and the work and having that conversation with them before they even get a place on any of our degrees, we've got to see that this is something that they really care about. And it's something, even if it's not something they've done or implemented in their work, they're curious about. So they come with this curiosity, and we then have to help as the curriculum or our pedagogy in terms of education and really trying to educate them into the whole ethical fashion, and also who is their consumer, who is their collective, their community, and who are they selling to.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a really long-winded
there's a lot
answer.
There's a lot there, a lot to unpick. I think that something that you guys were talking about was the idea of the sustainable shopper, and if this is really a myth, or if they exist. And in the world where there is Shein, there's TikTok Shop. What do you think? Do you think the average consumer is really worried about, consciously buying things? They're worried about ethical fashion. What's your thought?
To be honest, no.
Yeah.
Your
it feels like we're in a bit of a bubble as well.
We really are.
Yeah.
And, at one end of the game, we've got, people like us in education really trying to get our students and the future designers to really consider people, purpose, planet. But then on the other end, and I quite understand it, you've got your consumers, many of who are cash poor and need to be going to some of these stores. But then on the other hand, we've also got young people who are going for the looks rather than the sustainable angle. And, it can be very disappointed when they're buying e-commerce, which is why I've got this whole problem with returns, because you've got this kind of greenwash happening where, look at this isn't made in polyester, this is made in beautiful linen cotton. When you buy it, it's going to look amazing. Look how it looks on the model. They buy it. It's in the thinnest polyester. Yeah. It's size 6 when it should be size 18. Yeah. So there's a lot of disappointment. So no, I don't think the kind of middle market and your average shopper is ready. However, I do think we are starting to tell these stories, and I do think we need to do more of that. I mean, we've got brands like Primark who are being incredible with their packaging and all of the stories they're doing about their materiality. So if they can do it, I think, the people that are ring fencing around them need to be. It's about storytelling. Yeah. And I think a lot of this goes back to education as well, and insights in schools. Yeah. It needs to be something that our schools are responsible for too.
Absolutely. You've worked closely, obviously, within fashion and education and behaviour change. What do you think is the role that education plays in kind of really shifting those mindsets, and how?
So, I mean, within the classroom, within the studio, part of our education is really trying to get students to consider if they have to buy fabrics, where they're buying it from. So the whole sourcing of materiality is really, really important. That's once our students are at the university, and trying to get them not to spend too much money on these kind of things, that they're actually sourcing from ethical, dead stock, etc., etc. British Fashion Council are great at that. They have a initiative where they give all of our colleges fabrics. But I also think it's around, once we have our students and they're studying fashion at degree, again, I mentioned it earlier, I think it's around really trying to implement something in the school's curriculum, whether it's through the textiles curriculum, the GCSE or the A-level curriculum, even really lower down at primary school. Part of my role before I was lead on knowledge exchange for fashion was in outreach, and I used to do a lot of work with schools, with teachers and networks and all of that kind of thing, pan-UK, pan-London. And I think just to have those conversations from the grassroots. So again, it's around policy making, it's around legislation, it's around just making sure that our curriculum is fit for purpose in terms of textiles and fashion. Yeah.
Do they do anything at the moment, like in schools? Well,
so we've got summer schools happening at the moment at Central St Martin. So we have summer schools for 11 to 15-year-olds. Okay. And me and my colleagues do some teaching on it. And it's interesting to speak to the students. A lot of them can't even thread needles. They don't do sewing or anything like that anymore. I mean, we have a shortage. And in fact, the conversation that I've been having today with a lot of people at sources, we have a shortage of skill-based makers
100%,
here. And I think more so in the UK than anywhere. So we need to be teaching. And I know the UKFT are doing a lot around this, and there's some apprenticeships that they're trying to build. But I think what we need is more skill-based makers in this country.
Yeah.
So that's something that we're obviously in education
Yeah.
for degree. We're getting our students to really consider the making,
Yeah.
all of those kind of things. We did a fantastic project with MA Fashion where we set up a makers camp. We did it in collaboration with practitioners from Ghana. So we were learning from their ecosystems, how we can bring a lot of those systems here. Just get more people making and creating through manufacturing.
And I think also the average consumer, if they knew the process and they knew what actually goes into it and they're a bit more educated on it, then maybe you would be making more conscious choices.
Well, I think it's going back to the chicken and egg. And I think, you know, they did this thing. I loved it when Jamie Oliver did this whole thing about chicken and went round schools. A lot of students, young people, didn't even know where the chicken came from. They just thought it was sort of fleshy stuff wrapped in some cling film. It's the same with fashion. You buy a top, your wonderful waistcoat you're wearing now, the denim with the embroidered flowers. Were they hand embroidered? Even if they weren't, were they machine embroidered? The work involved in that waistcoat alone. I was just talking to some amazing artisans from India who were showing me the work that they do. I mean, incredible. So really to get people to, it's back to storytelling.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at what you're wearing. Even if it's a simple t-shirt from Primark. The way it's constructed. If you did that at school. And you made something at school, you would understand. Wow.
And you need to build a connection to the things that you're buying, and we just don't have that anymore.
There is no connection. There's no connection to our foods. They're doing a lot more of that now in the food industry. We need to do that in the fashion industry. You know, they're kind of leaps and bounds ahead. They're working with farmers from the soil all the way up. So we're understanding where our food's coming from. We need to be doing that with fashion and textiles.
No, I agree. And I feel like it feels a lot now that, I mean, the idea and the kind of basis of fashion is about expression and it's about joy, but I feel like that's lost a lot. Now people just look at it as a function or look at it as like buying something new.
Yeah, we heard about the weekend culture. People are buying things for a weekend and sending them back. You know, they don't want the story behind it. They don't want to. You used to have your grandparents that would tell you where they'd got something from and it was handed down and you got special pieces. My grandmother used to make beautiful dresses for us for special occasions. And we just don't have that storytelling anymore. Like you said, the connectivity. And I think a lot of that could come from younger people making things at school, making their own. I had one of the girls that was on the summer school last week was talking about making her own prom dress. Wow. I mean, come on, bring it on. Things like that. Then how you've got this legacy that you can then take forward.
No, I'd love something like that at school.
Yes. We just don't have it anymore in our schools. It's all around STEM, you know, science, technology, English and maths, unfortunately. So, if you could embed a new value into that whole system and into the whole industry, I know you're really passionate about fashion, but what else needs to change? If you had to change like one thing, let's say from tomorrow. I think for me, it's very much around, I mean, sort of inclusivity, the word inclusivity, which again, I think we had a whole couple of years ago, we were all looking at DE&I, we were all looking at inclusivity and how that works within the creative sector. For me, I think this is something we have to always really reflect on and address, because through that, our problem with fashion at the moment is we know we've got marginalised communities, the ones that don't have the money to spend. They're the ones that need to be hearing some of the stories and understanding. They're the ones that many, many years ago, their parents may have been making their garments for them. But now they're going off to the cheaper end to buy. So for me, it's just inclusivity. And with that, I mean to make sure that everyone is educated in terms of the broader spectrum. It's not just people at the private schools or the private education systems, but it's all of those that need to hear these stories, both the children and their families.
I like that. And I also like the idea that inclusivity, I think it also is important when you're thinking about the people making your garments, just like we said earlier. Like, we're just not thinking about that enough, I don't think.
Nobody is.
And I do feel like the people side of things, especially when it comes to things like ESG or even these kind of departments in these big brands, they're not necessarily thinking of the people side of things.
I don't think they are, and that seems really great. Well, because they're not. It's money now, isn't it? And, you know, sadly, I hear a lot of our students, they leave Central St. Martin's. Some of them set up their own brands. Some of them go and work for big luxury brands. And they'll come back and they'll say, we just can't design. HR or business are running the show. And even if there's a creative director there, it's HR, or they're saying, no, this sells, this sells, this sells. So it's all about slashing. And it's sad to know that they've spent 4 years working to get a job in the creative sector, to design and to storytell. And when they get to brands, it's like having all this creative freedom and then it all being shut down a bit when you join a big institution. I mean, we understand people have to make money. But I think a lot of it is through greed. And I think we've lost, as you said, that connectivity and that understanding.
We've got to bring it back.
We
do.
Bring it back.
Okay, we're digressing slightly and I feel like I could talk about this for hours. That's absolutely fine. But
we literally need our own podcast, don't we? That's another thing.
I
we'll
love
do that.
complaining about the world. But what I think, my final question really, just to bring it back to your session on the catwalk. So what do you think, what's one thing that you'd like people to remember from the session? Whether it's something you said, something one of your panelists said, something challenging that kind of challenged your own way of thinking. What is it that you'd like people to remember from the session?
Well, I think I'm going back to storytelling. I think that came up a lot. We had two incredible brands who were in the panel who were talking about their brands, and they were all around the story. And you just need to look at those brands to just, I mean, I looked on their website, it's incredible. It's about the storytelling. So you can see why the consumers are buying them. So I think it has to be, and obviously I spoke, a lot of what I said was around storytelling and making sure that our students were doing fantastic research and telling these incredible stories. So I think for me, it's to, and that encompasses everything. It's the importance of storytelling, understanding, and I'm talking from a brand perspective, from a designer perspective, understanding your unique selling point. Who are you? What's your beating heart? And how can you bring that into your business?
Love it. I want to start my own brand after this.
Oh,
I mean,
wow,
I won't.
come
I
on.
can't.
Well, no,
I definitely can't.
No.
Anyway.
You've got enough going on, I think.
Please.
You've got enough going on. And enough,
Thank you so much, Berni.
No worries.
Thanks for your,
no worries.
thanks for being here and enjoy the show.
Well, thank you for asking. I mean, I've got a few more people to go and visit, but I've met...
And you're matching with our branding as well.
Well,
very
I am
nicely.
matching with the pink. I mean, that's perfect, isn't it? Thank you for that.
It's all for you. Right, thank you so much.
Brilliant. No worries.
Okay, so we are back. It's day one. It's Source Fashion. We have Helena from Products of Change. Helena's just come off the catwalk for one of her sessions, but if you'd like to quickly introduce yourself, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I wasn't on the catwalk doing a catwalk show, by the way. So hello, I'm Helena from Products Change. I'm the CEO and I'm the founder. We are 6 years old as an organisation, and we exist to help the brand and licensing industry reduce its environmental impact.
Excellent. So your session was talking a little bit about how can we build or how can we produce fewer products but still make a business impact, still make profit. Can you give us kind of maybe a couple of sentences on what you got out of the session?
Totally. Well, first of all, it was very fascinating. So thank you for inviting me to be on it. I think to me, my biggest takeaway is that currently the way that we produce, sell things to retail, sell things to the consumer, and forget about what happens at the end of life as products, those days are over.
Yeah.
And so the way businesses used to have been operating is going to no longer exist because of legislation pressures that are going to start to track the waste of what we have within industry, because of packaging regulations, because of material requirements. There's going to be so much that comes down and hits industry. As well as building circularity, so the very end of a product's life, not thinking of that's it, that's done. Actually, there's going to be value in that way. So there's people going to be wanting to build circular systems to resale and talk to your consumer in a very different way. So actually, to me, what's really exciting is we're going to get to do things differently. It's going to be a bit painful.
Yeah.
And for companies that have traditionally been doing things the way it's been done.
Well, change is painful. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
But I also do think that this is a really great moment for people to start to understand how they start to change industry, but for the better, that benefits everybody.
Yeah, wonderful. So we talked a little bit in your session about post-growth model and kind of decoupling. Can you explain a little bit about what that actually means?
Yeah, so as I said, we're kind of used to this drug of buy high volume at a very low price, offshore, ship it over here. Don't really care about the waste of that. 30-40% of what gets produced doesn't even hit the consumer. But because we've been able to buy it cheaply, we kind of don't care, which of course we do, but that's how we've been operating. And so it's how we decouple from that. So what are the new business models? What are the new systems that we need to operate in and implement and partner to build that's going to enable us to do things a little bit differently? So it goes from a simple, very well-oiled, very efficient industry to an industry that actually is going to start trialing different ways of doing things.
Okay.
But within that, there will be profit, because actually currently there's not a huge amount of profit in that way of working. But we just don't measure ourselves from that. So
No.
buyers are measured on an intake margin, not an exit margin, or the profitability of their whole, of their buy. And so we need to start kind of unraveling that and looking at all of those elements of business to understand where are the efficiencies and the opportunities to change.
Okay. And is there, so obviously you're saying we could measure different things. Are there examples of what could be measured as growth that we aren't measuring now?
Yeah, well, to me, and I know we all say we have to grow, but actually I would challenge people to look at where the value is in the business and actually what's important to the business. And so you get a lot of businesses where actually driving a sustainable brand is really important for them. So there's value in them continuing to do things differently. Nobody's child, for one, as a brand has been doing that. They're growing, but they're also growing the profitability of their brand by doing that. So, people spend money in marketing. If you're a type of brand that does a different type of marketing, or you have a real core purpose in what you do that helps to market you anyway. So is there value in that? So the value just gets shifted around rather than it being just financial. It becomes actually there's value in the marketing, there's a value in the product, there's a value in the resale or the redistribution or the circularity of that, and there's value with that first sale. But again, there's not just a one size fits all anymore.
Yes, exactly. And I was thinking that if you are one of these huge, big, large organizations where you've been working a certain way for a really long time, how would you even go about trying to change some of that? And how could you shift that perspective?
Well, first of all, you can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
You have to work within your company, because you're going to have a person that's going to be responsible for one element of that decision making. You also need to partner within your industry. There will be companies that are already looking at this that might be more progressed than you. Most of the time they will share that with you, or that's what we do a lot of at Products of Change, of getting the same stakeholders in a room talking about the same problem and see how people are more progressed. And they say, well, just take this maths that we've put together here. We worked with this company to help us here, so that can help people on that journey. Can't do it on your own.
No.
That would be my biggest piece of advice. And go start asking people in a similar situation what they're doing.
Yeah, because I was just trying to put myself in perspective of someone who's attending Source Fashion today. I'm hearing this, I'm like, yes, I'm so inspired. But then I'm working at a really large institution where I am kind of limited, I am restricted, and I don't even know where to start. How could we, for someone who is maybe in a little bit more middle management or a junior position, how could they kind of make the business case for people higher up, or what do you do if you're in that situation?
Well, I think the majority of large brands have climate targets.
Okay.
And most of those climate targets aren't connected back to the buying team. I don't know why they're so separated, but they are, and it's most likely just because the business is just so vast. But on the granularity or on a smaller scale level, is how do you start showing up that chain to your senior management?
Yeah.
Actually, if I make this decision here, it's going to make a positive environmental change, and this is the finance of it.
Yeah.
And actually, you're not necessarily targeted on that, but the overall company is targeted on that. So how about we make a saving in this way?
Yeah.
And then you just start to build that case for having KPIs against different elements, and not just a percentage, not just a margin that you need to hit.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's good advice. That's very good advice. Yeah, because I feel like I often talk to people when I'm researching for the content or just chatting day to day, and a lot of people are, in situations where they're kind of like, I want to create change and help make change, but I'm kind of stuck because of the system that I'm in.
Yeah.
And I think that the session like yours is kind of challenging people to think a little bit differently, which is good.
People make the change happen. You can't wish change to happen.
Yeah.
You've got, it's people coming together and connecting that makes that gets that domino effect.
Yeah.
So unless you're talking to people within your company, not just on the normal stuff that you talk about in a meeting, but actually on different elements, that was just never going to happen.
Okay. And just bringing back to the panel itself, was there a moment that you felt your own thinking was being challenged maybe by either one of the panelists, or just you were thinking that you've never, it was a new idea that you hadn't heard before?
I loved Charlie and what he's doing in his business, because you got to think the majority of people that are managing large corporations, like myself, we're of an older generation and we're very used to the old ways of doing things. Charlie's coming in and he's disrupting that. He's saying, well, if we're going to have 30-40% left over, why are we even ordering that? So my demand is this, and actually I'm buying 30% less than my demand. I don't think you'll ever find any of the large brands doing that. They will always buy more to maximise that sale. And actually, but by doing that, what he's doing is he's then creating a demand for his next lot and his next lot. So he's able to sustainably grow his business by being really true to the DNA of them as a brand. And I think that's really simple but really clever, and I think more brands should be brave enough to do that.
Yeah, and just for context, it's Charlie Jones from Phase London. He's a managing director, and they do exclusive drops of their products, and it sells out each time. And I know he orders only as much as he needs. He always sells out. He was saying as well, he only wears his own stuff, which I love. So he's a walking advertisement. But yeah, he's doing some really cool things.
But they track the data. And again, what I found really fascinating today, you've got Charlie, he's looking at it from a data perspective. I think I've mentioned before that we work with a brand called T-Meal, who are based on the Isle of Wight. That was created by two engineers. They're not from the fashion industry. So you've got fashion brands, but because that are driving double-digit growth in the fashion industry, not because they're designers, but because they're looking at the data, and there's 1% gains, and just the whole engineering of everything. And I think that's so fascinating in a creative industry.
Do you have any other examples of people who are kind of coming at fashion or coming at the brand with a completely different, not from a design perspective?
There's a lot that are coming at it with a purpose and not just brand. So actually the DNA of the brand will drive. And then obviously you've got the creative elements that come second. It's not the creativity of the brand that's driving them as a business. Nobody shouts, yes, they're beautiful clothes, but it's who they are as a brand that's giving them a point of difference to what's in the market, not necessarily what their clothes look like.
Yeah, okay. Do you feel like any of these kind of new wave brands, can they really compete with some of these larger institutions that have been around for God knows how many years?
You step outside of fashion and you've got Tony Chocolonely, who's the quickest, the fastest growing chocolate brand. They've been around for 15 years. They have purpose through and through. That's what they stand for. Next generation wants brands like that, and they're a little bit more expensive, but they're really grabbing market share. And then they've opened their supply chain to all the other chocolate brands. And so all over industry you can see pockets of these innovators that haven't just popped up. They've been doing this for a long time, but just that sheer continuation of their messaging and what they stand for within a business is now starting to enable them to really gain market share, and they're gaining it quickly.
Okay, that's a good example. Yeah, they're really amazing. And was there anything on the panel that you felt that you didn't get to say, or you ran out of time, or?
I think we kind of touched on partnerships and connecting across industry. I think industry, especially a very big industry like fashion, can be very closed book. I think more people should be partnering and showcasing and sharing innovations. I think, but also I think sustainably sourced materials, yes, tick. Reducing your carbon, yes, tick. But I think how a business operates, the operational constraints of business today are the things that are actually slowing down progress. And so we've actually got to do the boring work.
Yeah.
We've got to get under the skin of it and do that boring work
Yeah.
of looking at where are the opportunities
Yeah.
for efficiencies in a business model, and then the rest will then be unlocked.
Yeah.
And we need to do that hard work, which most people
Yeah.
don't really want to get into yet.
Yeah, tell me about it. But yeah, okay. Well, thank you so much, Helena. I appreciate it. We have a longer podcast with you that's coming out soon as well. But thank you for being here.
And thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so here we are. We're with Garnett. She's just come off the catwalk stage. She's done her session. For anyone who didn't catch it, can you give us a little bit of a rundown on what exactly you spoke about?
We spoke about secondhand and how it's not second best anymore, how it's become so mainstream. And we talked about, I've been doing it for so long, how did that feel for me, but also how does that look in the bigger picture?
Yeah, because I think it must be strange when for you secondhand is not really that new of a thing and it's just how you live your life. And is it weird seeing how like now it's shaping how a lot of people buy their fashion?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's great. On the other hand, it's a bit like I've slightly that spirit of like secondhand's amazing, secondhand, and putting it in my shoots, and really it's a bit like, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
So there is that thing of like, it's everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
So, you know, of course it's nice when, not nice, but when something feels like more your thing. It doesn't feel like that anymore, but hey, that's okay.
And so I think most people will know, but if you want to remind people, what do you think that kind of stood out? What was a turning point for you in kind of bringing secondhand to become more universal?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things. I think it was COVID, when people actually stopped to kind of think about the way that they consumed. I think it was climate change, climate action. I think it was how to do, I think it was also an antidote to boohoo and that kind of Instagram culture of one picture and then, throwing the dress, like this thing of wearing something once and that being a good thing. It was an antidote to that of like, that's not what style is. So I think it was a combination of things. And then that just created this like whoof moment that changed, that's what it takes, right? It's like a landslide. And then it was just like, we're off.
And do you think I want to ask this in a way that is not negative, but do you feel like resale, secondhand and kind of vintage shopping, do you feel like it is something that is here to stay? It's not just kind of like a trend cycle? I don't want that to sound like it's cynical, but I guess I just wanted your view on that as someone who has been doing it as an individual for a very long time. And maybe, what do you think?
I think that's a really good question. I would like to say, of course not, because people know how it's so much cheaper and it's the same or it's better. So on one hand, I would say, I think that it's here to stay. There's another part of me that I remember even 4 years ago when people seemed to be really, really concerned about climate and climate change, and now they don't. And so things change. And I think so I don't know. I would imagine secondhand's here to stay, but I thought that there'd be more work around climate action generally, and there isn't. So I it's really hard to know because things go in and out of fashion.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the other day about how it felt like everything was about rental. And I feel like I'm just not hearing as much about that anymore. And I feel like even just on the show, like in February, we were talking a little bit more about rental and even last year. And I just don't feel like people are talking about that much anymore.
I feel like rental's not talked about anymore.
Yeah. And why do you think that is?
I think that rental ultimately, and I'm only speaking out of my own, thoughts, is that I just don't know. It seemed like this brilliant proposition, but ultimately, I don't know if it perhaps was. I think that people like owning their clothes.
Yeah.
I think that people, but maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe someone has a rental business be like, you are so wrong, girl. We do great. So I don't know. For me, it never appealed to me. Fine. But I'm a thrifter. I'm like, that's mine. I want it. It's mine. Yeah. Okay. I'll lend it, but you'd have to pay for it. But give it back to me.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't know. I just felt like there was so much more noise around some of these brands that were kind of hiring out clothes. It's
weird. I agree with you. I never hear anything about them.
And was it that the models just wasn't making money? I don't know. Maybe it's something we need to look into.
And there was that whole thing of like they had to be dry cleaned, and then the
Yeah.
transportation. There were these other things that came
Yeah.
up, and there were counter arguments to that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening with
Yeah.
that market.
Okay, well, something to look into.
I think a lot of the people who do have those markets also do resale.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure
yeah.
that they stand alone that much anymore.
Yeah.
But again, I could be wrong.
Okay, well, that's something to think about. For you and for you personally, what's the most exciting thing about pre-loved fashion? I know there's maybe that connection, the attachment. What is it for you that's the most exciting thing?
I think the most exciting thing is the fact that it's one of the most exciting things is that it's not new. I mean, if you're talking about going onto a website and finding last year's whatever, that doesn't do it for me. I'm talking about secondhand, charity shop, creating stories for yourself, using your imagination, having a rummage, finding something. I love things having had a life. I like things having existed before me. It kind of feels like a relief of like, oh, this hasn't just been made for me. Like this had an existence already. I can just take it over.
Yeah.
And there's something kind of a bit more kind of weirdly, or not weirdly, there's something just more, feels better. Not even in a sanctimonious way. I just like that more it just makes me feel, it's more fun and it feels more right.
Yeah, and it feels like there's something bigger than yourself, like it was here before.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, it's
you're
like
just
this,
carrying on a story.
It's not as transient as all these other clothes.
It's still part of a story.
Yeah, love it. Do you feel like, so we've kind of covered this already, but the appeal of secondhand, some people are saying it's really driven by sustainability. Do you think it is really driven by that, or is it more about people trying to express themselves and finding their individual form of looking good? What do you think is really driving people's want for secondhand at the moment?
Again, I think it's a real mix.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, when it comes to clothes and makeup, people always want what they want. So, I think that it's ultimately been a style choice where people are like feeling more confident. I think Instagram changed the whole landscape of style, of making it more democratic. So people stopped subscribing so much to the fashion thing where it was like, fashion was like, you have to have this, you have to have that. People like trends. I do my own trends. It's a real combination of things. It was like style and references coming up to the surface. Anyone had access to them. Everyone has access to them. And that made having style and being into fashion much more sort of, as I get, democratic for everybody. That's had a huge impact on secondhand. It's all of those things, really. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Is like the fashion world not being having such a hold over people.
And it not being inaccessible necessarily. Is there like a look or a feel, if you look at somebody, do you feel like you can tell if they're wearing pre-loved stuff just by looking at them? Or does you feel like there's a look that signifies someone who's like a second-hand shopper?
Sometimes if I see someone with like a great kind of, sometimes when I love it when people wear like what's clearly like a man's tweed blazer and it's a bit old but it looks amazing, you can just see it's vintage, or I mean, again, for me, the secondhand, the things that I love seeing, to me, I'm not into that retro look. I love like that thing of, usually I'll be like, I love that, and someone will be like, oh, secondhand, rather than like it might be, it might not be. I like that. I like the kind of like,
okay, the mystery.
Not necessarily. Is the answer.
If you had to pick one item that you would never part with, could you tell us what that is that you might already have? Maybe you've got lots. Maybe you've got plenty.
The older I get, I could probably get rid of it all.
Cool.
As long as I can keep my dogs.
Oh yeah, of course you can.
Oh, my dogs.
In this theoretical world, you can't get rid of them.
No, as long as I got my dogs.
Yeah.
It's funny. What would I my jewelry? I like my jewelry.
Okay.
And I like my, I've got some cashmere sweaters that I wear every day that I love, and probably. I said this down, it's a bit boring for me to say it again, but my banana print top that I put on Kate Moss and then Chloe used, and then it went on to be, it's gone on to have we talked about secondhand clothes and storytelling, and that little top has had quite a kind of prolific
It's
fashion
kind of wild
life.
if you think about it, like a print having such an iconic like story behind it, like it is kind of wild. Like
I know, I sat next to someone at dinner and she turned around to me, she went, you're the banana print girl. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. It's like I've done nothing since.
Where do you shop? Where's your secondhand favourite places that you go?
I love British Red Crosses. I love Cancer Cares. So I go into this. I love Oxfam. So I just go, it's funny. I've got quite a good instinct. I'll go past a charity shop and I just think it's just going to be high street shit. I don't need that. I'm not going in. And then other times, so I can see from the look of what, the edit that the person's done. So yeah, I do that. Oxfam Online's good. And then I like Etsy.
Okay, yeah, of course. Do you
Etsy.
Just going back to the Oxfam, do you go to different regions, specific regions of those?
No,
or
when
do you
I'm
just
prepping
wherever?
for the fashion show, I go to their big warehouse, which is not open to the public. I'm delighted to say.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I don't. And now my days of going off in a car and going thrifting, they don't do that. I don't do them anymore.
Okay.
But
yeah, Etsy
but
is
I
also
find
good.
it almost impossible to go past one. I mean, ended in arguments. I was in this town with my daughter, and she was with her friend and my friend, and we were all meant to be together, and I disappeared. She came back. She went, "I knew you were going to go in." I was like, "I'm really sorry. I just can't help it.
It's a problem."
Yeah. And I'm trying to keep up, and I'm dipping in. But sorry, digress.
Okay, no, that's fine. And so then Etsy, I guess, if you're not
love
gonna,
Etsy,
that's also a good.
Because Etsy, you just get it feels to me, Etsy feels like the closest thing to a charity shop online for me. You get and I love the descriptions 60s beatnik, leopard print coat. This girl was a right pin-up, or I like all that kind of funness. The more expensive secondhand ones, I don't really visit.
Okay.
I still like finding, feeling like I found something.
Yeah, and there is definitely a much more of a personal element, I feel, with Etsy than you do get with Vinted or any of those other ones.
I feel
Etsy feels a bit more homey.
Homespun.
Yeah. I don't know how true that really is, but okay, cool. Well, last question, really. Just bring it back to your session. Is there one thing that you want people to remember from your session at all?
I think, and I say this to myself, is that we should all just be buying less generally, but there isn't really one thing. I mean, I'm not the beacon of, I just think, buying secondhand is a better thing, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's become so mainstream. Maybe it isn't.
Yeah.
But, I think that just buying less and go to charity shops as well, and just, keep it real, basically.
Yeah, keep it real.
Keep it real.
Yeah, like that as an ending. Well, thank you so much, Bay. Thanks for being here. It's all
so
fashion.
much for having me. Thank you.